Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media.
It's the oldest continually run daily cartoon in the country.
The immune system does well when it's trained to respond to infection.
We created this kind of a community within the community to help our neighbors.
Today on Spotlight, how the flu shot could help protect kids from COVID. Plus, the story behind the Weatherbird from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And then iconic performers help raise money for stage and music scene staff. But first, exploring the history of St. Louis firehouses with a new book. It's Sunday and you're watching the Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Until you are required to stop in front of one of them, most of us give fire stations just a passing glance. And yet the history of St. Louis's firehouses gives color and context to the history of the city itself.
There are 11 stations presently that are over 100 years old. They first talked about the fire service in the 18 teens, and then in 1857, St. Louis became only the second paid fire department in the United States.
The history of those houses is told in an elaborate new book with the no-frills title, St. Louis Fire Stations. It is a pictorial history of the city's firehouses, based mostly on collections belonging to firefighter Dennis Magg and fire department historian Robert Pauley. Both men took many of the pictures themselves. Robert Pauley began photographing local firehouses back in the 1960s using a Kodak Brownie, famous for being one of the cheapest cameras ever made.
I don't drive. I never have driven, so I had to take the bus, and I thought it was safer that way, having an inexpensive camera.
In the beginning, St. Louis's first firefighters were all volunteers who rode to fires not in a high-horsepower truck, but with real horsepower, which is why the city used to have a horse hospital. The last run using horses was in 1927.
And Tom and Jerry and Monk and Strawberry were the last 4 horses we had.
Many of those first firehouses were as pretty as they were practical, though in some cases the authors only know half the story.
Quite a few of the photographs, we only had the lower half. We never could find a complete picture of what the station looked like top to bottom.
There are plenty of pictures of this familiar fire station at South Kings Highway and Christie. When it opened in 1926, it became the city's 53rd station, the highest number of firehouses the city ever had.
Today they operate from 30 stations. One of the reasons for the number of stations going down was motorization. Motorized apparatus was quicker than the horses, so with the response times and everything, they started closing stations.
There are lots of other tidbits in the book, like pictures of so-called joker rooms, where a firefighter at each house sat monitoring alarms instead of fighting fires. The men were selected for that unpopular duty using a deck of cards. Whoever got the joker got the job. The book has several pictures of the Underwriters Salvage Corps. What was that?
They would work alongside the firefighters, and what they would do is say if a fire was on the 5th floor, the Salvage Corps would go to the 4th floor, and they would take the items that were in the building there and take them to an area where the water perhaps wasn't flowing down. They put it all in the center of the room. They would cover it with a canvas tarp, and that would protect the items there from damage.
Reedy Press originally printed 2,000 copies of the book, which sold out quickly. A second printing is coming soon. But no matter how many copies are sold, it won't make the authors rich. Both men have directed the publisher to send any royalties owed to them to the Backstoppers instead, the organization that supports the families of first responders killed in the line of duty. Do you think most firefighters know the history or care about the history of their own stations?
It's becoming more popular now than it used to be. Back then they didn't really care. It was just a job to them. But now you can tell by certain stations, they have a lot of pictures and other memorabilia displayed throughout the firehouse. It's kind of a pride thing, I guess.
And I think that's fascinating that that they're taking on that history. A lot of the new generation of the fire service just seeing it's a different generation of people even when I came on, and a lot of them spend their time on their phone all the time or looking at computers, and for this to have helped those younger generation firefighters respect and acknowledge and want to carry on that history, I think is wonderful.
17, booking letter 2, 804, 802, squad 2, 87 respond. A first alarm for a report of a fire at the warehouse service, 3937 Farm.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
With every stroke of the bow, every stroke of the brush, with every stroke of genius, the arts make life in St. Louis richer, not just emotionally, but also economically. In our region, the arts create almost $600 million a year in economic activity, supporting more than 19,000 jobs, generating almost $60 million for state and local governments, with almost 12 million annual arts-related visits. That's more than all St. Louis sporting events combined. Whether in a park, on a street, or a wall, experimental or a classic, the arts deserve our support because the arts help support us. HEC Media is proud to be our region's home for arts, education, and culture because in St. Louis, the arts mean business.
Children who receive a flu shot are less likely to suffer symptoms from a COVID-19 infection. A new study from the University of Missouri School of Medicine shows a flu shot may help protect children against the effects of COVID-19.
Generally, I saw in the clinics and in the hospital that patients who were vaccinated did better generally, so I decided to collect data on them.
Dr. Angelique Patwarden is a pediatric rheumatologist at MU Healthcare. She reviewed the charts of more than 900 patients, 20 years old and younger, who were diagnosed with COVID-19. She found that the patients who had received a flu vaccine in the current flu season had lower odds of experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, respiratory problems, and severe disease.
Odds of having a symptomatic disease was less in children who had a flu vaccination.
Patwarden says this may be due to a phenomenon called viral interference, when the growth of a new virus is inhibited by a previous viral infection. This can occur when the first virus invader is an inactivated virus, like the flu vaccine. While more research is needed to see if other factors are at play, the data suggests the flu vaccine offers a possible advantage. Other types of vaccines may also give what the investigators of a different study call trained immunity. Last September, before the COVID-19 vaccines were available, some St. Louis healthcare workers chose to participate in an international clinical trial on the Washington University Medical Campus. Investigators wanted to see if the frontline healthcare workers receiving the vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, the MMR vaccine, would have a strengthened immune response to viral infections, protecting them from COVID-19. If so, for how long? Dr. Michael Avedon is principal investigator and Dr. Mary Politi is co-investigator.
The immunity to the specific viruses of measles, mumps, and rubella lasts a long time, hopefully a lifetime. But to other viruses and other pathogens that you may be exposed to, that immune response is probably months to years. We don't know exactly how long.
The immune system of the body actually does well when it's trained to respond to infections. Where we've discovered this in particular is in relation to weakened organisms that are used as vaccines.
Avedon is leading the study called the COVID-19 Research Outcomes Worldwide Network Collaborative, or CROWN. But once the new COVID-19 specific vaccines rolled out, recruitment in countries with the vaccines, including the U.S., stopped. The team launched a sub-study looking at markers of trained immunity with those who received the MMR vaccines. They want to know if it primes the immune system to be more responsive to other viruses and other vaccines.
That SARS coronavirus 2 vaccine could work better than it would have worked if they hadn't got the MMR vaccine before, because their immune response will be trained by having received the MMR vaccine.
This year, flu vaccines may help protect children during the pandemic, as COVID-19 vaccines may not be approved for all children until early next year. Flu activity peaks between December and February, but activity can last as late as May. For the full story, including more information about the MMR vaccine studies, go to our website, hecmedia.org.
St. Louis, we're going through difficult, confusing, and often frightening times. But HEC Media is here for you in new and expanded ways with free educational resources.
It is so in-depth.
Critically acclaimed author interviews.
Books save you, I think, if you're going through a bad time.
Virtual art fairs.
This allows our patrons to shop a variety of artists.
Local COVID research.
This is kind of a home run, a dream response to the vaccine.
Fundraising for artists, virtual concerts, and much more. HEC is honored to help our arts and cultural communities survive and thrive, and to show you there is strength and hope in St. Louis.
A performance from Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon, later on Spotlight.
It's been a fixture in the paper for over 100 years. You've seen it on the front page every morning. It's the Weatherbird, the colorful character who is always there to fill us in on the day's events. But who is the man behind the bird?
Hi, I'm Dan Martin. I'm the Weatherbird cartoonist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I've been doing drawings and cartoons and designs since 1980 for the Post. I got to the paper in 1980, and Amity Wolschlager was the Weatherbird cartoonist. He had been doing that for 50 years. And then when he retired, Al Schweitzer took the job. Then about 1985, he came to me and said, "Look, I'm thinking about retiring. Would you be interested in this?" I said, "Gosh, yes." And so I've been drawing it since 1986.
The Weatherbird has a long history, with many talented artists carrying on its spirit over the years. But the bird itself was born on a train returning to St. Louis on a particularly cold winter day.
In 1901, a staff artist for the paper, Harry B. Martin, was coming back from an assignment out west, and he was looking through a magazine, and it had pictures of little baby birds, little baby blackbirds that he thought were pretty funny. So when he got back to St. Louis, this is in February, and it was snowing and the weather was crummy, and he did some sketches that he thought that would sort of reflect the same entertaining comic features of these photos of these little baby blackbirds. So he realized, it's snowing, this could go with the weather forecast every day. So he drew up about 10 or 12 of these. He submitted them to the editor, and so they ran these, and then when they had to start repeating some, all the readers of the Post wrote in and said, "No, we want a brand new Weatherbird every day." So that's when the madness started.
The Weatherbird quickly became a popular staple in the paper, but cartooning in St. Louis extended far beyond one character. As the city grew in the late 19th century, it became a hotbed for artists.
Turn of the century, we're the fourth largest city in the country. There was a lot of artists that were attracted to the Washington University School of Fine Arts that came through here, as well as a lot of artists that went through and were attracted to or worked at the 1904 World's Fair.
Some of the most celebrated cartoonists in history have found themselves in St. Louis. Among them were bold political satirists, blunt war correspondents, pop culture caricaturists, and one newspaper magnate who would become one of the most influential media figures of all time.
Joseph Pulitzer is a famous publisher. He essentially reinvented journalism and created modern journalism. He was an immigrant from Hungary. He was a very educated man, very bright, extremely energetic and ambitious. He was recruited along with other Europeans to come to the United States and fight in the Civil War. When the war was over in 1865, he had no money, no prospects, and he sold his last bit of clothing, a silk handkerchief, to buy a train passage to St. Louis. So when he got to St. Louis, he fell into a crowd of fellow European intellectuals at the St. Louis Mercantile Library. Through those connections, he became involved with the Westlicher Post, a German language newspaper in St. Louis. It was very famous. And then he became an owner of the Westlicher Post, and later he was able to buy the St. Louis Dispatch and St. Louis Post and combine them in 1878. He was here until he went to New York and bought the New York World. Pulitzer died in 1911, and then he left about $2 million of his estate to Columbia University in New York City to establish a journalism school and prizes. And so today, that's still the most prestigious award and world famous, the Pulitzer Prizes. And it really started by an ambitious young Hungarian here in St. Louis. Joseph Kepler was actually an Austrian immigrant and got to the Post-Dispatch after the Civil War. He met Joseph Pulitzer at the same German bookstore that both of them liked to go to. And he started a publication called Puck, and it didn't go over very well here. It kind of flopped. But then he went on to New York City and revived it again, and it became a huge sensation. It was sort of the defining American humor magazine that all other humor magazines have derived from. And it was noted because it had these tremendous stable of artists, world famous cartoonists. Al Hirschfeld was arguably the greatest caricaturist of the 20th century. He was born and raised here in St. Louis. He was really a child protege and really gifted. And so when he was about 10 or 11, his mother took him to an art instructor and said, what more can we teach this child? And the instructor said, you really need to go to New York. So that's when they moved to New York, and then he worked doing drawings in the motion picture industry there. But he became famous for drawing theatrical caricatures. So he haunted the theaters of Broadway and did sketches in the dark. These were famous in the New York Times. Anyone that has an Al Hirschfeld drawn of them covets it. Bill Malden, he won the Pulitzer Prize here in St. Louis for cartooning in 1959 for a story about Russian gulags and Boris Pasternak, the author. But his even greater fame came when he was a much younger man in 1945. He worked for the Stars and Stripes during World War II, and he created these two characters called Willie and Joe that were the quintessential dog-face average guy soldiers. Anyone that was a GI that's still around from World War II, they revere Willie and Joe and Bill Malden.
Throughout all the change and tumult of the 20th century, the Weatherbird has remained a constant. Now, as it continues into its second century, we look back on its legacy and its path into the future.
I've tried to bring the Weatherbird up to a more almost national relevance. I feel a great personal responsibility to carry this on as long as I can, and that the paper carries it on as long as they can, because it's a terrific tradition. It's the oldest continually run daily cartoon in the country, and we're pretty proud of it at the Post.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
We thought we had a chance to do something very special. And that is to raise money for the many people in St. Louis and the St. Louis region who are out of work because of the pandemic, who work in live entertainment.
We're talking about a staggering amount of people that are involved in producing a show. I don't care if it's at Busch Stadium or the Del Mar Hall, the checklist is the same. It's ticket takers, it's wait staffs, it's backstage crew, stagehands, lighting technicians, sound engineers, marketing people. Runs like a machine, but when you walk into a theater like the Sheldon here and it's empty, I begin to realize just how many people are affected by the shutdowns of these theaters.
So we decided to create an entertaining video special. It's an hour and a half long, 90 minutes long, that shows St. Louis what does happen in a concert. For example, we went to the pageant and talked to Pat Hagen. He stood on this empty stage in this empty concert hall and pointed to, like, over there will be a guy mixing sound. There will be someone over there working lights and curtains.
We have 4 full-time technical employees. We have got a production manager, a front of house engineer, a monitor engineer, and then a lighting director at front of house also. In addition to that, we have 4 to 10, sometimes 15 subcontractors serving as stagehands, riggers, spot operators.
It's really an entertainment special. It's a show. It's not a streaming concert. Ron has done a phenomenal job in terms of putting together, like I said, a 90-minute show featuring some of the top names in entertainment: Sammy Hagar, Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon, George Thorogood, Paula Poundstone are just a few of them, plus a host of local musicians from Mama's Pride. Pat and Danny Liston will both be doing separate things. It's really, it's quite an endeavor.
In fact, in every case, to a person, all of them went above and beyond. We didn't ask them for anything in particular. We suggested, tell us some stories of your memories performing in St. Louis, and they all told some very funny stories.
I don't think I've ever done a tour where I didn't stop in St. Louis. Even if I just did a 2-week tour, one of them was in St. Louis. I think the most memorable thing that ever happened to me on a show in St. Louis was, I guess it was 79, 80, 81. I did Busch Stadium, the old Busch Stadium, the original one. And I had the song Red, was pretty much a hit. Trans Am was out at the time. So a guy had a Trans Am, so I borrowed his Trans Am and had a Z28 chase me into the stadium through the back. And behind the stage where you could see, everyone, the whole place could see, we spun circles around, tore up the damn lawn. I think I had to pay for it. And then stopped the car, jumped out of the T-top, ran up on stage, and went into the song Trans Am. And I just remember that by the time I got to the stage, I was so exhausted from what it took to jump out of that car and run about 100 yards up a ramp onto the stage, and then all of a sudden there's 44,000 people, and I'm going, I'm out of gas in the first song.
Riverport, Hollywood Casino Amphitheater, the Muni, the Rep, the Sheldon, the Fox Theater, all of these and more, all the way down to the small dive bars on the east side, allowing us to use their space.
And our plan is to give $1,000 grants to those that qualify in the St. Louis region, the St. Louis metropolitan area. You just simply go to keeplivealivestl.org and you can donate and see the special anytime for the next 6 months. You know, one of the ways we've tried to equate it is think of the money that you've not been spending to go to concerts, and now here's a way to repay those people that produced these shows for you over the years.
Everyone who donated, everyone who shared a Facebook post, everyone who told their friends about it and watched it. We've created this kind of a community within a community to help our neighbors.
Let's forget our goodbyes and how quickly time flies, because my friends, we're together again, yeah, tonight. Here we are, just like before, together again.
And now an excerpt from Keep Live Alive St. Louis, featuring Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon.
Without the awesome rock fans of St. Louis, the amazing radio stations, KSHE Real Rock Radio, of course, and all the venues around town, we wouldn't have made it, man. It was the people of St. Louis who took us into their hearts and souls and gave us the confidence we needed to keep going, keep trying all over the country. But it was St. Louis, man. It was you all that brought us into your lives first, and we will never forget that. The first song of mine that ever got played on the radio came on Keishi back in 1976, and its message is pretty apropos for what we're all going through right now, because you know, we all got to keep pushing. I used to be lonely till I learned about living alone. I found other things to keep my mind on, and I'm getting to know myself a little bit better. Oh yeah. Whoa, I keep pushing on. I keep pushing on, yeah. Going through all the changes, I made so many mistakes. Oh yes I did. Trying to leave behind the heartaches. And sometimes I think I was a little bit crazy, but we all get a little bit crazy now, don't we? Whoa, I keep pushing on. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. I'm gonna keep pushing on, keep pushing, keep pushing. You know you've got to be so strong. Keep pushing, keep pushing. Even if you think your strength is gone. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing on. Oh yeah. Woo! Keep on pushing. That's what you got to do, St. Louis. Keep pushing. Stay strong. We'll be back. We miss you guys. We love you guys. Send in a little money to help our people out. And live music will return to St. Louis, baby. I promise. Woo! Keep pushing, baby. Woo!
To donate to Keep Live Alive St. Louis, visit keeplivealivestl.org. Next week, exploring history and architecture with a ghostly side at the Art Museum. Plus, the art and science of beer with Urban Chestnut Brewery. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.